I've been talking this whole time on mute. Can you believe that? Crazy. I was trying this new title card thing and I totally forgot to change the color. Or the color. The sound. Whoops. Alright. Man, now I gotta start all over because you guys couldn't hear a single word I was saying. Let's start that all over. Can you? Alright. Alright. See, I'm still new to this. Can you blame me? Alright, anyway. Now that I'm really embarrassed, let's start drawing hands. So, starting from the beginning again. When we're drawing our hands, we want to start with a rectangle shape. The reason we want to do a rectangle shape is because we're going to find that that's going to be way easier to connect all the parts of our hand. So we'll have the wrist kind of coming down here like this. I'm going to have to move this down a little bit. All right. And then we're going to have our 4 fingers kind of coming up here like this, connected at the top. And then our thumb, if you kind of follow the bone of your thumb down, you'll notice that it connects right to your wrist. So you want to have your thumb connect to the wrist of the hand you're drawing. All right. So next part, we got to make sure we get our hands, the fingers on our hands to be the correct size. If you kind of draw a hand where all the fingers are all crazy sizes, it's not going to look like a hand. So we got to get the right proportions. So those proportions are our longest finger, our middle finger, is as tall as our palm. So I'm going to measure out here the palm. I'm going to use my pencil to measure it out. And then I'm going to bring it up here. And that's how long my middle finger is going to be. Hey, Seth, you didn't miss much. I was on mute the first 5 minutes, so I'm starting over. You didn't miss much. All right, so here's our middle finger. Very rude. Here we are. So before we get to drawing the rest of our fingers here, we got to divide up our ring finger. So about, I would say maybe about halfway up here is where we're going to get our first knuckle. And about 1/3 of the way up from there is where we're going to get our second knuckle. And then our nail is going to sit right there. It's going to take up most of that last digit. So that's our our middle finger. The reason that's important is because when we're trying to draw our hand in proportion with itself, we need to know where everything's lining up. So I say so a lot. I'm going to cut back on that. Okay, so I just said that. Anyway, we have our index finger here. If you kind of draw a straight line across, it's going to hit the nail of our middle finger. So if we kind of draw a line out from that middle fingernail, that's how long our index finger is going to be. So I'm going to draw that out here. Now you might notice I'm drawing the fingers very square. And that's usually just to kind of, I find it easier to draw everything in terms of squares. It makes everything fit together a little bit easier. Once I kind of get the hand all laid out, then I kind of round it out to make it look a little more organic. But for now, everything's going to be very square-like. So again, the knuckles here, we're going to be about halfway, then about 2/3 of the way up, and then we have our nail. Okay. Next, we got our ring finger. Now this I find fascinating. And it looks like we got 5 people watching right now. So I want all of you guys to say in the chat, if your ring finger, is it longer, shorter, or the same size as your index finger? For me, my ring finger is longer than my index finger. But I'm curious with you guys in the chat. Is your ring finger taller, shorter, or the same size? No responses. You guys are too shy to tell me. Well, that's okay. The truth is, everyone's a little bit different when it comes to their ring finger. Some people it is taller, some people it's shorter, and some people it's the same size. No, actually, Doug, you say that your left hand, the ring finger is taller, and on the right hand, they're the same size. That's actually not that uncommon. Everyone is, the ring finger is such a weird finger on our hand that it's, some people, they're the same size, but they might be different than other people, and sometimes they're different on their own hand. We're not as symmetrical as we think. So that's actually pretty common. So since the ring finger can be a totally different size, depending on the person or the hand, today we're just going to go with um, equal in size. So I'm going to kind of line it up to the nail here, just like I did with the index finger. And I'm going to draw in the ring finger. Oops. Ah, and Seth, both of your ring fingers are shorter than your index. See? And then me on both hands, my ring finger is taller. All right, so I'm going to draw on this ring finger here. Put in the knuckles, put in the nail. There we go. All right. So the cool thing about this is it doesn't matter if your ring finger is taller, shorter, the same size, your pinky will come to the exact same spot on your ring finger, which means that if your ring finger is taller, you're going to have a taller pinky. If your ring finger is shorter, you're going to have a shorter pinky. It all just depends on your ring finger. And so the fact of the matter is your pinky is going to come up to the top knuckle here of your ring finger. So that means the pinky on this hand I'm drawing here is going to come up to this line here. Well, knuckle here, knuckle here. There we go. We have our 4 main fingers there. Now for the thumb. There's a couple ways to measure the thumb to make sure that it's the right size. The first way, if you put your thumb straight up, not bent like this, but straight up, you'll notice that your thumb will line up with the bottom knuckle of your first finger. So that's one way to measure it. So if I kind of took my kind of arced out from that knuckle, that's about how long this thumb should be. The other way to check to see if you're drawing the thumb at the right size is your thumb from the inside here, not from the outside, but on the inside of your thumb. The inside there is going to be the exact same size as your pinky. So if you measure the length of your pinky, it's going to be the same as the inside of your thumb here. So I'm going to measure the size of the pinky I have here, measure it from the inside, and it looks like that lines up here. And I know you guys can't see me holding my pencil up to the screen, but trust me, it's there. So I'm going to draw on this thumb. There we go. There we have a pretty good looking hand. Now, 2 things I've always noticed when students of mine are drawing hands. The first thing is you want to make sure the pinky and the index finger are in line with the rest of your hand. Often I see hands from students who are new to this where they'll draw the rectangle and they'll draw, you know, their fingers here. Of course, I'm being very quick. But they have this little edge here between the first finger and the side of the hand. But if you look at your hand, you obviously don't have any edges there. So you want to make sure that it's right in line with the edge there. So the other thing is, when we're talking the other thing I see a lot, we'll go back to here, is I see thumbs that even if the thumb is connected to the wrist, it just looks like this weird blocky edge happening here. And obviously that is not the case either. It's going to be kind of like a J shape here. So obviously it's not quite a J because it's backwards, but you want this kind of smooth transition like the letter J from the vertical to the horizontal. And you got that same thing here. You want to go from here to the thumb in that nice smooth curving motion. And that's the absolute basic anatomy for the back of the hand. But what about the palm? There's some anatomical things we need to talk about that. So to save myself half of a step here, let's copy this. And then let's erase the nails here. Because obviously, when we're looking at the palm, we can't see the nails of the hand. All right. So practically everything is the same at this point. All the proportions are the same. Everything's the same. But what we need to draw is making the palm look like it's the palm and not the back of the hand. And we do that by drawing the padding that we see on our hand. So we have 3 major parts. We have a lot of padding here on the thumb side. We have some padding here on the pinky side, and then we have a little bit of padding across the top. So when we draw that in, we have kind of the major padding here on the thumb side. We have a little bit of padding here on the pinky side, and then we have a little bit of padding here on the knuckles. So when you do it right, you get this triangle shape in the center of our hand here. It's kind of like a little bit of a pocket, and that's really important for when you're drawing the hand making a fist. Your fingers fold into that little triangle shaped pocket in our hand. So that's why it's really important that you keep that in mind. Not only will it help you when drawing the hand closing or making a fist or holding something, but the padding will also help you figure out how an object should be sitting in the hand when you're drawing the hand holding something. So that is that. So what I want to talk about next is how the hand moves. But before I move on, I just wanted to ask the chat real quick if you guys have any questions, you want me to go over anything again. If there's just anything that you want me to go over or elaborate or make clear if you're not clear on. So I'm going to give you guys a second to chat to ask any questions, and while I set up the next part. And have a little drink of water. Do 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 do. No 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 no. Do 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 do. All right. No questions. Really interesting. Good. I'm glad. All right. So remember when I said at the beginning, or towards the beginning, that I draw everything very square-like because it helps the hand, helps me drawing the hand. And that especially is true when I'm drawing the hand at different angles and in different positions. When the hand bends, especially the fingers, they bend at 90 degrees. So when you have a fist here, you have your hand going straight across, then your fingers bend at 90 degrees down, and then they bend 90 degrees back, and then 90 degrees back up. So your hand makes essentially a big cube. So when you're drawing everything in a cube-like fashion, it really helps when everything's square. So let's start with actually, before we even get to that, there's one little thing that nah, never mind. I changed my mind. We're going to go along with this. Okay. So our hands bending to like hold things, the way our fingers curl, the way they move. Our hands naturally, when they're naturally relaxed, you'll notice the pinky here is more closer to being closed than our index finger. Our hands really like close when you're not thinking about it. You can think and say, oh, I want to close my index finger first. But if you're a little bit on the slower side, if you're not thinking about it, you'll just naturally close your pinky first. And knowing that motion is going to be very helpful in drawing your hand doing different positions. So I'm going to start with a little bit more of a complex pose of the hand, but it's one of my favorites to draw, and it really shows how the pinky closes first. And that's a reaching out motion like this. or something like this, reaching out like that. That's what I'm about to draw here. So when I'm doing that, again, thinking of the hand as a rectangle, or the palm as a rectangle, the front where all the fingers attach, it's going to be on the front there. And of course, our hands have this natural curve to it. I say that it's very rectangular, but that's really more of a guideline. Obviously, there's curve and round edges to our hands. Do that too close to the top. So that's our front. This is where our fingers are going to attach. And because our hand is moving out in space, we're going to use perspective, basically a 1-point perspective here to kind of draw the palm. This is our palm, this is the side here. So if we kind of trace this going back, you'll eventually hit a vanishing point here. So we want to make sure, we want to keep this in perspective. All right, and so we're going to start with our index finger. And I'm just going to draw that moving straight up, because remember, when our hand is naturally closing, we're going to have the first finger is going to be sticking out the most. The pinky is going to be closing the most there. So we're going to draw the hand coming out like this. All right, so what I do at this point is I like to draw like a little bit of an arc coming off of that first finger and coming down like that. That kind of helps me figure out how the hand is going to arc from the first finger all the way down to the pinky here. And then I pretty much just draw each finger to that line. Now, when I'm doing this, I don't worry too much about the proportions. Although, that being said, this index finger is a little too thick here. But when I say I don't worry about proportions, I don't really worry about how long the fingers are. I worry more about if they're going to hit this line or be close to that line, because of foreshortening. Certain part, even though the ring finger is much longer than, say, my index finger here, at least on my hand, it still looks shorter because of foreshortening. So I'm not going to be too worried about getting the exact proportions right. This arc should arc a little bit more down like this. And now I have to draw a thumb. Now, a tip for drawing the thumb, because when you're doing something, a hard pose like this, you might not be quite sure where the thumb would be sitting. So the rule of thumb, get it? Is the thumb is going to be in line with the pinky. So if I kind of draw a straight line across where my pinky ended here, that's about where my thumb should be. Now, remember where it's talking about the palm, I have the kind of padding here for the thumb. I have the padding here for the knuckles. padding here for the pinky side here. And we have our wrist kind of attached our way there. Now we gotta, now that this is pretty much done, we gotta kind of smooth this all out. We can't have everything being so cubish. Gotta make it look more natural, like an actual hand would look. I don't like how I did that thumb. There we are. That looks much better. So we got a hand now reaching out. So, so this is obviously a little bit of a harder hand to draw. And I can understand if you're kind of coming here for basics and now you're seeing me draw this, you're like, how am I supposed to get to that? Well, one, with practice, but let's take a couple steps back then. Oops, we don't want that. Okay, so like I kind of use what I was saying before, how the pinky closes, how the hand is very square to kind of help draw the hand. So let's take just a step back and kind of talk a little bit about how the hand does bend. Before we even get to how the hand bends, let's talk about like the structure of the finger. So if we're looking at the top here, I'm going to kind of over exaggerate to get the point home. So if this is our palm here and we have a finger, or we have all four of our fingers, they're not as straight up as you might think they are. They actually have a slight curve. They curve in towards the center of your hand. So instead of being straight lines up like this, they kind of gently curve in. Even that's too drastic. More like that. The middle finger is mostly straight, and then the first finger kind of curves in like that. So for the actual finger structure itself, we have I'm just going to kind of outline the hand here so we have something to work with. Okay. So we had already talked kind of the placement of where the knuckles go. Now let's talk about the more specific shape. So our hand, or our fingers specifically, have not a whole lot of padding on top. It's pretty bony on top, but a whole lot of padding on the underside here. So you want, when you're drawing the hand, you kind of want that to reflect that, especially when you're drawing gripping motions with the hand. It's going to be really vital that you do that. So I'm gonna over exaggerate this to get the point home, but so because of how the bone structure is, it kind of curves in. Actually, you know what? Let's change the color here and make this a little bit easier. So the bone kind of curves in a little bit here to where the knuckle goes. And we have the padding that kind of on the underside that we see just a little bit of from the top. It kind of comes around like that. And that gives us the shape of our fingers from the top view. So it kind of curves in. Just like this. Now, if you keep in mind how the top of our fingers are kind of flat and bony, when we draw the fingers from the side, that's going to become much easier. And therefore become much easier when we're drawing the hand at all different kinds of angles. So let's talk about that. So the top of our hand is very flat. The underside is very curved because of our bony top side and padding on the underside. So when we're drawing our hand here, it's almost kind of like hills and valleys, kind of like this shape is going to happen with our hands when we're looking at from the side, that is. So we have our palm here, and we have our finger. Sticking out this way. So let's go back to red. So our palm has a slight dip until it gets to the knuckle, and it's going to come up here like this. And so the first knuckle, second knuckle, and the end of our hand is going to be about here. So again, because of the basic shape of the bone on the back of our fingers, it's going to kind of dip down a little bit, hit where the knuckle is, peek up a little bit, come down, hit that second knuckle, and then come up to where our nail is. So that's basically our palm and our digits for our fingers here. The palm's going to be a little bit bigger. So the underside, because of the padding, is going to be curved. So we have a curve here for the first knuckle part, a curve here for the second, a curve for the third. I was a little too zealous in the curve with that one. And then depending on which side of the hand we're looking at here, we'll see the padding of the palm itself right there. And then the nail will probably sit right about there. So that's basically the structure of our fingers from the top and from the side. Before we start talking about the fingers bending, I'm going to take a sec just to see if there's any questions, concerns, fears, existential crises, any of the above, all of the above. Let me know if you guys have any questions at this point, and I'll address them. And if there are no questions, we'll move on to how the fingers bend. Let's do that in blue. All right. Doesn't look like any questions, but seriously, guys, if you do have questions, just throw them in the chat at any time. There's not many of you guys watching. There's not a ton of you guys chatting it up, so um, I'm not. I have no problem just kind of stopping whatever I'm talking about and address a question if you guys have it. That's kind of why I'm doing this. Uh, I I teach drawing, but with the limited time I have with my students, I don't usually get to go in depth. Usually I only get to talk about something for about 15-20 minutes and then have them practice it. This gives me a chance to really go in depth and answer any kind of questions. Uh, yeah, feel free. Any of you guys. Looks like there's 6 of you watching right now, so uh, yeah, that's not very much. So it's pretty easy for me to address any questions you have. So moving forward, uh, the way the fingers bend, I mentioned a little bit earlier, they kind of bend at 90 degrees. So I'm going to kind of draw over what I have here. So this finger, and I say 90 degrees, I should say they don't bend any more than 90 degrees. If I try to bend this top part of my index finger any more, I can probably get it to 90 degrees, but it's kind of difficult. So they might not bend exactly at 90 degrees, but in general, they won't bend more than 90 degrees. Let's put it that way. So if I take this finger and bend it down, it's still going to follow the same shape. It's still going to have this kind of curved top and curved bottom. It's going to curve down this way to about where this knuckle is. So, and then the padding is going to create kind of a, because it's going to get bunched up in the bend there, it's going to create this kind of larger curve that when the hand's outstretched. So then this second part here is going to be bent across here. And again, we're going to follow the same curve here, but from this knuckle, it's going to curve in an upward direction because essentially this part is upside down at this point. So it's going to curve up like this. And then this last part is going to curve. But like I said, with my index finger, I can't really get it to bend exactly at 90 degrees. So it'll probably curve up like that. But we have our padding here that curves here like this. That's going to curve up like that. And then the padding that curves there, it's going to curve up like that. And that's essentially how our fingers bend around our hand. This looks very like a very rude gesture at this point. So that's how our hands bend. All right. So it does look rude. All right. So let's kind of show this a little bit more practically. Let's draw like a fist. Let's draw it from a couple different angles. So let's see. All right. So let's just start very simply. Let's just draw a fist straight up like this. As usual, you want to start with a rectangle, you kind of want to know where your fingers are attached before you start drawing the fingers. So this is our palm. And now you want to start drawing the fingers bending down. Now, if you guys were here at the beginning of the stream, you'll remember I said how the fingers kind of bend into this triangle pocket we have into our palm, which means our fingers are not going to just bend straight down like this. We're not going to have our fingers kind of bend like that and then our thumb kind of bend across like that. Now that's an effective way to draw a fist if you wanted a very simple, cartoony, or maybe even like a graphic, like an icon, like symbol of a fist. But that's not realistically how our fist works. Since all the fingers are trying to bend into that pocket there, they're going to kind of bend inward. So here's my pinky here. When it hits this knuckle, it's going to have a bend this way. And like I said, I always like to think of the hand and the fingers as squares because that really helps with understanding the direction everything should move. When you think of, like you have a cube, when a cube kind of changes shape, it's always going to be kind of moving in perspective. If it changes angles, it makes it easier to figure out which way everything is bending, in which direction they should be going when it's bent. And I find that it's the same thing with fingers. So our pinky is going to start bending down. Technically, I want to be super technical here. It's really going to kind of be more bent like that. But by and large, the first part here is going to be moving down, but when the final angle kind of comes in here, it's going to bend towards that triangle pocket that we have. The other thing to notice when we're making a fist, our knuckles are not even straight across. It kind of has kind of a hill that happens here. So if we kind of make a hill going upwards, that means the next knuckle is going to come up here. And it's going to try to bend into the pocket there. We have our next finger, our middle finger, and that's going to bend into our pocket there. But with the index finger, something very interesting happens. It can't fit into the pocket. If you make a fist and you hold it up, you'll notice your index finger here sticks up a little bit. And that's because the thumb padding on your hand gets in the way. So your index finger sticks up a little bit and is going to be at a slightly different angle than the rest of your fingers here. All sorts of things going off here. All right. So we have our four fingers coming across. Now we need our thumb to come across. But remember, our thumb connects at our wrist. So it has to come up from our wrist. It's going to bend to be pretty much even with the side of our palm and then come straight across our fingers. So it's going to come up from our wrist, straight up, even with our palm, and then straight across here, our fingers. Now, everyone's a little bit different, but I find most people, the thumb only comes across our first two fingers. I guess you could maybe come across all three, or if you maybe have a very long thumb, maybe you can go across all three. But I find that's usually not common. And just remember, just like how our hand over here looks, uh, even our thumb is going to be curved on the outside, and with the padding on the underside. Oops. So our thumb here is going to have that bony curve on the top part of our thumb. And the padding on the underside there. So let's erase that line, and let's give ourselves a wrist. There we go. We got a fist from this side there. Oops. All right. There we go. All right. All right. Any of you guys watch Bob's Burgers? Let's move that there. Any questions on that before I move on? Oh, yeah. Is that to the Bob's Burgers comment? All right. So let's do a yeah. I love that show. Okay, so we did the fist from the side here. Let's draw it from the front. Let's say you're drawing a superhero kind of throwing a punch here. So let's start with, let's do a new layer. So as always, we want to start with kind of a rectangle shape. Even though most of this palm is going to get covered up by the actual fingers, it's always just a good habit to get into. If you're in, just to kind of realize where all the features of the hand are going to be. Kind of like anything in life, the more you do this, the better you'll get at it. But not only will you get better at it, it'll get kind of ingrained in your brain. So a lot of this stuff I'm doing and I'm showing you, I don't always draw out, but I do still think about it. It's still like in my head. I'm thinking, where is the structure? Where is the palm? What direction is the palm moving in? Even if I might not actually draw it out. But that's because I've done this so many times that I can see it in my mind's eye without actually having to draw it out. So I recommend, if this is all new to you guys, I really recommend that you do draw this out, even if you end up erasing the entire palm after you draw all the fingers and the thumb. It's still good to know where all the fingers are attaching and which direction they're moving in relationship to the palm. But once you get really good at this, once you're able to see it in your mind's eye, you might forget, or not forget, but you might just choose not to draw some of these parts. So anyway, so we have the palm. This is the front. This is where our fingers attach. Kind of more of like a this kind of pose. I guess we can see a little bit of the bottom of the palm, so it's probably more closer to this. So that's what we're working with here. It's so when we're drawing our fingers, we're going to again just like when we're drawing the this palm or this hand here. The fingers are all going to be bending kind of towards the center. They're all going to be kind of going to this pocket part here, and they're all going to be kind of moving around the hand or around the palm to make that fist in a very square-like fashion. So let's do that. Let's talk about that. But and again, just like with the other palm, they're not going to be all even. Notice how we have this kind of hill happening here. So it kind of moves up with a peak where the middle finger is and coming back down. And again, notice how we have our index finger kind of sticking out a little bit and the rest of our fingers kind of in a line. And if you trace the knuckles start higher and will get lower as they get to the pinky side there. So that's where we're going to go with that. So if we have our knuckles, let's have our index finger on this side. So we know that we have our little hills going, peaking at the middle finger and then coming back down. Let's start with our pinky here. So the pinky's got to come down. And then bend in. We have our ring finger coming down. Again, bending inwards. And if we remember, even I messed this up, the knuckles, the front knuckles kind of have a downward curve like this as well. So we want to make sure our pinky knuckle's the lowest here. Then we have our ring finger knuckle, middle finger knuckle, and then our index finger knuckle. Oh, getting the beach ball. There we go. And we have everything's going to come bend in, all kind of trying to fold in. The index finger curving in here. So right now this looks a little bit on the sloppy side. And there's two main reasons why that is. Three main reasons, I should say. One is I'm drawing kind of sloppy. Two is because I haven't drawn the thumb yet. So right now it looks like there's something, this looks like a weird looking hand because we don't have a thumb to kind of make it register as a fist. But the third thing, well, we'll get to the third thing in just a second. So how's the thumb come across? We don't see a lot of it, how it bends. We see it coming straight across here. And we see a little bit of how it comes back. But that's really all we see at this angle. So I'm going to draw the thumb here. And the thumb, again, if you notice, it sits right at the bottom of all the fingers. Like, we don't see them, like when the fist was like this, it's crossing in front. But when it's like this, it's sitting on the bottom. So we want to make sure we have that thumb coming across here. You can see the nail. So let's get that in there. All right. Again, this is looking more like a fist from the front, but it still looks a little weird. And that's because we forgot about the padding. Like, I keep pointing it out because it's so important. The padding that's on the thumb and pinky side, if we forget that, we're forgetting an entire part of the hand. So when we're drawing that, you can see on my fist here, you can see the thumb padding here and then the pinky padding there. If I add that in, that makes this fist look so much better. Tidy this up a little bit. This thumb's at a slightly weird angle. There we are. So again, if this is a fist or a punch being thrown, you'd see the wrist and the forearm kind of coming out this way. It's a Super Saiyan punch. All right. So that's fist from the front. So we did the up like this, front, figure. Can I, from the side this way? Let's do it that way. It's very awkward. Here, like that. I'm going to draw the fist from the side there. But before we get to that, I just want to give you guys another chance to ask any questions. If anyone's lost, confused, just want to know about my the tools I'm using. So I'll kind of clean up this drawing a little bit as I wait for any questions to come in. All right. All right, so it doesn't look like any major questions are coming in. So I guess I'll just move on. All right, so fist from the side. Same thing that we've been doing here. We're going to start with the palm. Now, since we're doing it from the side here, the palm's going to be relatively very skinny. I might even want to go skinnier. Now, I started to show it with this drawing here, how the fingers kind of bend down and come around. Oops. That's basically what's going to happen here. So this is going to be hard to show on camera. So we have our palm on the side there, and how we have our kind of hand fingers moving around. But unlike the other example I was showing you, where the fingers move at 90 degrees, the index finger is the finger that we see uh, first and foremost. And like at all the other angles, it sticks out a little bit because of the padding, because the padding on the thumb. So it's not going to be at 90 degrees. It's going to stick out a little bit more. So let's get to the actual drawing here. So it's going to kind of, instead of coming down like this, it's going to stick out more like this. So let's get that kind of drawn in, more detailed. All right. So, all right. So depending on the exact angle you're trying to draw the hand from the side, you might see some of the other fingers. You might not. So I'm just going to kind of hint at the other fingers. Although they are going to be moving kind of, I'm going to do like a dotted line here. They're going to be moving more downward and then across and then up, if you can see them at all. But in general, that's where they would be. Now for the thumb. The thumb always connects to the wrist here, but it's coming, when we're drawing it like this, remember how it comes straight up? It's in line with the side of our palm. That's so much so the case here. It's going straight with our palm here. So it angles out from our wrist, straight with our palm, and then bends across our fingers. So it's kind of coming out from our palm, kind of even with our palm here. I actually like to work backwards when it comes to the thumb here, because I know it has to come across here, and it needs to go straight here. So it needs to come out, come straight across, and then cross in front of our fingers here. I'm going to make a couple small adjustments because I'm on camera and I am messing up a lot. All right. So again, here's our wrist. So the thumb comes from our wrist, comes out, moves up with our, in line with our palm, and then comes across here like this. Now if you look here, you'll notice, trying to do this, trying to do it like I'm looking in a mirror, but I'm not. So, so it comes across, and we have this kind of like opening, the way that the palm kind of comes up and the fingers wrap around. So the fingers kind of come up here. Fingers kind of come around. And kind of come up this way. But remember, we have, it looks like we have this big hole here. Why is there that hole? There's not really a hole there. Because remember, all the other fingers are kind of folding up into that space there. So let me just clean that up a little bit. Wrist. Finger, here's our thumb, kind of comes around like that. So it's essentially our hand from the side. At least a fist from the side. Now, personally, whenever I'm drawing a fist like that, I kind of take a shortcut. So I figure it's worth talking about. Because this always looks weird to me. It's the way the fingers kind of fold, and creates all these kind of weird creases, and so like, I don't know, it's always looked weird to me. So I've kind of adapted a little bit of a styling choice to make the fist look less weird. So what I always do is I always start with this kind of square shape. So that's basically, this is the back of our hand here, this is this part here, this is our index finger here, and this is our thumb here. So that's this shape here. So I always kind of just start with that outline. And then all I do at that point is just kind of create a little bit of a fold here. And then just kind of create a little bit of a drop shadow. All right. I'm sure you get my point by now. So it's not exactly perfectly, I don't draw every detail in drawing how the fingers and thumb bends, but it looks a little bit more, a little less weird, I should say. So I feel like I'm kind of running out of stuff to do. We talked about basic anatomy. We talked about how the fingers bend, fists at a couple different angles. Yeah. There's still a lot to talk about. I mean, I could talk about how, hands holding things. I can talk about hands interacting with faces, like doing different kind of like facial or like expressions with hands. There's a bit more I can talk about, but the major point of today's stream was to talk about the basics of hand anatomy, and I think I've covered that. So I think this is what I want to do at this point. Um, I think I do want to open it up to you guys and just see if you guys have any specific questions, or it doesn't have to be a question specifically on drawing hands, but it might be if you guys have any questions on like tips or tricks in drawing hands, any kind of I don't know. I don't know what kind of questions you guys might have, but I figured now's probably a good time for that. Uh, so if you have any, um, uh, just throw them in the chat. Uh, they don't have to be profound. They don't have to be deep. You guys don't have to be shy either. I I've taught students from ranges from 6 years old to 40 years old, and I've seen all sorts of questions from all different ranges. So don't be shy. If you genuinely don't know how to draw something, or have a question on something, please ask, and I will answer it. So I'll give you guys a second to type that out. And I figure if no one has any questions, what I might do is hijack this stream away from a hand tutorial and just go back to drawing the Goblin Slayer that I was working on Saturday for the last stream. So I figure that's what I'll do if no one has any questions, because without opening up a whole new subject that I didn't really plan on talking about, there's not a whole lot to talk about with hands. Plus, I've been talking for like almost an hour and a half straight, so I'm not sure how much longer I could talk about hands anyway. No, really. No questions. Oh, well, good, Doug. I'm glad that you've liked this. Hands are usually really tough for everyone. Uh, Even I struggle with them time to time. It really just kind of depends on what and how I'm drawing them. Sometimes uh, some hand positions I don't have any troubles with. I just throw them down real easy without really thinking. And then there's other hand positions where I have to uh, really take pictures of my own hands, get a lot of references. If you guys have seen my My Hero Academia art, there's a lot of art hands in those. I haven't practiced enough to draw hands. Well, now's a good time to start. Practicing drawing hands starts with just grabbing a piece of paper and trying, and being horribly embarrassed by how bad they are, and then trying again. All right. Well, let's see. We're at about an hour and a half-ish mark. So doesn't look like we have any questions. So I think let's switch over to inking Goblin Slayer. I kind of scheduled about 2 hours for streaming tonight, so I might as well fill this last half hour with getting some work done. I'll actually give you guys a preview before I go to Goblin Slayer. Every month for my patrons, we almost every month. I'm a little behind. I do a choose your own adventure comic where all the patrons get to vote on what happens next. So the next art here is this piece here, and this isn't quite done yet. There's still a little bit of work to do. So, but once this is all done, this is going to go up to my patrons, and they're going to vote on what happens next in the comic. And yeah, so that's a sneak peek of that. So if you want to see the finished artwork and vote on the next part of the comic, you should become a patron. Shameless plug. All right, so let's go to Goblin Slayer here. So for those of you guys who were at the stream with me on Saturday, I started this piece for my silver tier patrons. They get to suggest characters, and I randomly select one of their suggestions and draw it for everyone that month. Everyone gets like a high-res download of the artwork. So the winner this month was Goblin Slayer. On Saturday, I hated drawing his helmet, but here we are. I got through it somehow. And so let's get into inking. If we go ink for about a half hour here. So I'm using this round opaque brush that has a nice grit when I'm doing very light. It's almost like a dry brush, but I can also have a very textured edges when I do a heavy line. So let's get to inking. And it still stands, even though I've kind of changed gears. Like I still have my tab open here for drawing hands. So if any of you guys have any questions about drawing hands, about what I'm doing over here with Goblin Slayer, any questions at all, please don't hesitate to ask. One of the things I love about streaming here is interacting with you guys. So if you guys got questions or comments or concerns or existential crises, don't bother to hesitate. Please ask. And if I am going to just be drawing, let's get some music on. That's a little loud. There we are. In case you're wondering, the music I'm playing is Creative Commons, so I'm not stealing anyone's music here. It's Norn Rad, who's a chiptune death metal composer. All the music from his album. What is the name of this album? Anomaly. All of it was made with the ability to be played on the original Nintendo. So I thought that was pretty cool. I think my favorite part about inking is doing the cross hatching. I love the stark black and white, but I love how much energy some good cross hatching will bring to the piece. That's probably why when I was a kid, artists like Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri appealed to me so much because they put just so much cross hatching into their pieces. It's looking pretty good. Now, some of you guys might be noticing while I'm inking, I might be making some changes to from my original line art. Like if we zoom in here, if we take a look at my the arms here, kind of take off the inks, you'll see that the way I originally sketched this or penciled it, not quite how it's looking in the inks right now. So I usually do that when I'm inking. Or when I'm inking my own work, I should say. I often make those changes on the fly. That saves me time when I'm drawing, not having to get a perfect pencil drawing, and it saves me time, especially when I'm working digitally. I don't have to worry about making the mistake of laying down a permanent line of ink that can't be taken back. So I can just very loosely pencil. And then any major corrections that I might need to make, I can make while I'm inking. And speaking of making corrections, zoom out here. Seth, you had mentioned that his arm looked a little funky in the original sketch. Do you think I fixed it up with my inking corrections, or does it still look kind of weird to you? And you don't have to lie. If it still looks weird to you, let me know so I can fix it. So we spent all today drawing hands, and now, of course, I'm second guessing my own hand I've drawn here. So the top of the wrist would come out like that. There's the pinky knuckle, ring finger, middle finger, index finger. And then the thumb comes around like that. Oh, you're not. So you guys aren't sure what I did. Honestly, the only major difference, like if you look how when I overlay the inks on top of the pencils, I really just kind of refined this part here, where the bicep is. I kind of made the wrinkles in the cloth a little more predominant. I had the wrinkles follow the form a little bit better around the arm. This initial sketch, these lines are very sloppy and don't really show the form of the arm very well, which is probably the major reason why you guys thought the arm was a little funky. And I agree, looking at the sketch here, this looks like the elbow is kind of broken. But I managed to correct that with the inks here, getting that cloth, making it feel like the belt here around his arm is flowing a little bit better around his arm. Should make that a little around there. So that's probably why it looks a little bit better. I'm feeling brave. Let's ink Goblin Slayer's helmet here. I say as I do his fur collar. I love one of my favorite things to ink is like fur and feathers, and to a lesser extent hair, because I get to just throw down these lines, and I don't need to be perfect with them. I don't have to follow a form exactly. I just have to capture the energy and the movement of the fur or the feathers or the hair. I can do some light hatching and some dark hatching, and it just really, I find it's a lot of fun to ink. So I love it. Like you zoom in and it looks like just this mess of lines, but when you zoom out, it really looks like fur. I love that part of this. Let's do his actual helmet here. How we doing, guys? I haven't been talking a lot. Let's see how this is looking. Well, not bad, not bad. All right. So, we don't have a lot of you guys watching, but I'm curious. I think my next stream is going to be on Saturday again. I think I want to make my streaming days Tuesdays and Saturdays, unless I hear from you guys saying that another day or time is better or more convenient. I don't know what I'm going to draw on Saturday. Maybe I'll take suggestions for Twitter. But if you guys also have suggestions what I should do for the next Tutorial Tuesday, since I am brand new to this, I'm still kind of learning. I'm kind of learning what is the best way to handle it, the best way to structure it. Plus, since I am brand new, I don't have a ton of followers yet. So, um, I don't expect a lot of, high demand for certain things just yet. I'm sure that'll change as we grow. Uh, but since you guys are here on the ground floor, you guys get to help me decide how I structure things, how I focus on work. If you guys want me to be a little more casual and less like a professor lecturing to you how to draw, or if you want me to just take drawing requests, maybe I'll end up doing that on Saturday. Who knows? Um, yeah, it's up to you guys. You guys are here to see me, and I want to give you what you're here for. And if I'm not able to give you that, then well, what's the point, really, right? So my Twitter handle is the same as Twitch here. It's The Great Shono. Feel free to tweet at me if you have any ideas, suggestions, anything like that, and anything that you would like to see, anything that would just make your experience here more exciting, or maybe not even exciting, just generally enjoyable. Maybe you're here just because it's fun just to watch someone draw. And I can make all my live streams that if you guys are into that. You can just sit here and shut up and draw, and you guys can just watch and enjoy. Or if you want me to talk more, do requests. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm new here, so I am open to suggestions. One downside with this brush is it's hard to paint bucket. You guys see this little halo because the edges of my brush aren't smooth. Whenever I decide to paint bucket, I get this little halo around here. Night, Seth. See you in a little bit. A little bit, like a few days. Whatever. I'm probably only going to stream for a few more minutes. It's starting to get late for myself. But I do want to open the floor one last time before I call it quits. Hold on one sec. Let me just finish this here. Well, then we'll talk. Looks pretty good. Still needs a little work, but it's coming along quite nicely. All right. All right, so like I said, well, let me open up the floor to you guys real quick. Just, a bunch of you guys have been coming in and dropping out, so let's go back to the whole reason why I even started this stream. Hands. Do a quick review here. All right, so hands. We have our middle finger is the exact same size as the palm. Our index finger comes to the nail of our middle finger. Our ring finger actually, well, it's only about 4 of you guys in the chat now are viewing this. But I think it's still worth asking. If you weren't here when I was doing this before, take a look at your ring finger and compare it to the length of your index finger. Is your ring finger taller, smaller, or the same size? I'm curious. If you were in the chat before when I asked this, don't worry about it. But if you're new, I'm really curious to see how long your ring finger is compared to your index finger. While you guys type that up and respond, we'll go on. So no matter how tall your ring finger is here, your pinky is going to come to this top knuckle of your ring finger. And then your thumb, the inside of your thumb, this part here, not the outside, but the inside, is the exact same length as your pinky here. Yeah, and another way to check your thumb is if you kind of draw a curved line up, your thumb should reach that top knuckle. When we look at the palm, we have our padding here, padding on the thumb side, padding on the pinky side, and padding across the knuckles here that form this triangle shape. This triangle shape is important because all your fingers fold into that little pocket that's formed there. And that's never more important than when we are drawing... Oops. I have so many layers, I lost track of them. Fists. Oops. Whenever you close your fist, your fingers, at least your pinky, ring finger, and middle finger, fold into that little pocket there. Uh, and yeah, remember that your fingers bend at 90 degrees. So your hand is, despite maybe thinking of your fingers as tubes or your hand as a whole as like a circle, it's very, very much like a cube. It's square. Uh, the way your hand bends is at 90 degrees. Your fingers bend at 90 degrees. So that creates a very square-like shape. And I think the last thing is just remember how your fingers are flat on the backside and curved on the underside where the padding is. And here there's another example of how our fingers bend at 90 degrees. And the last thing, I guess, to recap is when our hands are naturally closing, the pinky is the first finger to close fully, and our index finger is the last one. So that is the super fast recap of drawing hands for this evening. I think with that, it looks like I'm beach balling a little bit. Uh-oh, am I still connected? Okay, looks like I'm back. Okay, that was a weird error. But we're just about done anyway. So I just want to give you guys in the chat just a couple minutes to ask any kind of questions you have. I'll even open it up if you guys just have any questions about drawing in general or making art in general. You definitely. I want this to be a community. So if you guys want to just chat, talk to me, have anything to ask, now's your time. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to jump in the chat, ask away, while I keep on working on Goblin Slayer here. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys coming to watch. This is, again, my first Tutorial Tuesday. I wasn't quite sure how things would go. I think they went pretty okay, except for myself being muted for the first 5-10 minutes. That's a mistake I probably won't make again. But yeah, I want to do this every Tuesday. I want to have a different subject every Tuesday. So if you have a suggestion, you can tweet at me at The Great Shono. It's the same as my handle here on Twitch. You can become a patron if that's a thing. You want to help me make more art. My Patreon's mostly focused on the comics I make. I make a comic called Shadows of Oblivion. It's a creator-owned comic. It's a web comic. You can read it at shadowsofoblivion.com if that's something you're into. Yeah, I think that's it. So I'll give you guys one more minute, and then I think we'll call it a night. Good question, Doug. I'm thinking maybe around probably around 1 o'clock, 1 or 2 o'clock Eastern time on Saturday. I think will be my next stream. I have to kind of look at my schedule to double check. I'll definitely tweet it out, and I'll let everyone know on all the social media. And yeah, but I think probably closer to 2 o'clock. Probably somewhere between 1 and 3. So, or 1 and 3. I'm sorry, 1 and 2, closer to the 2 o'clock side. All right. I think we can call it a night here. I want to thank everyone who joined me. It was great. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was very informative. I hope you learned a thing or two. I hope you'll be better at hands now because of it. I throw out all my social media stuff. I'm sure you guys love that. And yeah, thank you. That's all I can say. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you guys Saturday, probably around 1:30, 2 o'clock. So take care, and I'll see you guys on Saturday.